All right. So I would love to welcome all of you. I want to say good morning to those of you in the United States, good afternoon in Europe and in Africa, and good evening for those of you in Asia. Great to see all of you from all across the globe. Many of you know me, but for those of you who don't, my name is Theo Spanos-Dunphy, and I'm the president and executive director of Global Citizen Circle. The mission of our organization has been for almost 50 years to bring together diverse groups of concerned individuals, from world leaders to local activists, for challenging discussions to stimulate meaningful and enduring solutions to our world's pressing concerns. Well, that's a bit of a mouthful, but in simpler terms, Global Citizen Circle is a convener of conversations, a bridge builder between people of differing backgrounds and perspectives, and a dialogue partner helping to enable change makers, young and old. So I'm pleased to welcome you all to the circle. Today is a special circle for several reasons. First are the discussion leaders with us, whose educational journeys are truly epic stories of perseverance and ingenuity. Next, this circle represents a true collaborative effort between our organization and our partner, Southern New Hampshire University. Having been housed at SNHU for the last 4+ years, we saw this circle as a way to bring together a global audience with people from throughout the enormous Southern New Hampshire University community, from the campus in New Hampshire, the global campus of online learners, and the global education movement, or GEM students, learning in refugee camps in Africa and the Middle East. We've been fortunate to have 2 graduates of the GEM program in Rwanda help us organize and promote this circle. So I want to give a big shout out and a thank you to Alice Barume and Fidel Byringiro. And finally, it's a real pleasure to introduce to you our moderator today, Adrian Hoggabrook, who leads the Social Impact Collective at Southern New Hampshire University. Much of what he thinks about and works on daily has to do with increasing access to education and providing opportunities for those too often left behind. I won't recite his impeccable credentials because you can read his bio in the participants program we sent along with the Zoom link. But I'll say this, I'm 100% certain you'll find him to be the perfect facilitator for this conversation today. But before I turn over the virtual mic to Adrian and hear from our discussion leaders, let me also say that we encourage interaction during and even after our programs. And if you have a question or comment, please feel free to type it into the chat. And once our discussion leaders have opened the program with their stories, Adrian will call on you to unmute yourself, say your name and where you're from, and ask your question or make your comment. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to you, Adrian. Thank you.
Theo, thank you. And thank you for that gracious introduction. You have raised the bar, so now the expectation is 100%. And so I ask and invite all of you to actively participate so that, again, we can raise that bar. I want to extend my appreciation for everyone joining us today as we hear very real, inspiring voices that help us to discern how opportunity and how access can lift up lives. And on behalf of SNHU, I thank you for being here as well. One of the most powerful roles that a person, an organization, or an institution can play is not that of the leading role, but that of a convening role. And this is what the power of this Global Citizen Circle has done. And just seeing how you all have engaged, even as we were leading up to this meeting, to this formal part of the program, is evidence of just that convening power. We also thank all of you who have joined from around the world, from the US to India, Switzerland, Canada, Rwanda, Hong Kong, Austria, and the list just goes on and on. You know, we often say in education that education is the great equalizer. But in saying that, it begs the question of, will we use education as a tool to create greater division and promote inequities, perpetuating that dynamic of the haves and the have-nots? Or do we leverage the capacity and the potency of education to create opportunities for all? And so as we contemplate today's conversations with these phenomenal discussion leaders, we come to this discussion knowing that there are still persistent, pervasive, and systemic barriers to equalizing education and mobilizing around opportunity and access for all. So my question is, when does the exception become the expected? So I invite you into the journeys of each of these discussion leaders and challenge you not just to be inspired by them, but to also be provoked to be an actor or an influencer in creating educational opportunity and access for all. So I will introduce very briefly each of the discussion leaders. There are deeper bios, as Theo said, in the booklet that was sent out electronically. So I invite you into deeper understanding of who they are. But first, I will introduce them all, and then I will pose a question and I will ask them to respond accordingly. So Lala Nguyen is the CEO and co-founder of 360 Ed, an educational technology, social enterprise organization and company based in Yangon, Myanmar. Maboba Akhtarzada is originally from Afghanistan and is a software engineer in Virginia. Remy Gakwaya is founder and director of Take No Lab, which is an organization that teaches software development, entrepreneurship, and digital skills to those who are most underserved in communities in Malawi and Africa. And then finally, Ella Inaz Hazwi, sorry, please accept my apologies. Ella is a graduate of SNHU with a degree in healthcare management and currently serves as a refugee college guidance counselor with our partner Kepler in Rwanda. And so I will begin and pose a question first to Lala, which is, and all of our participants will respond, what was the turning point in your life that inspires the work that you do? Lala.
Thank you for giving me the floor. It's an honor and opportunity to meet you all and be part of this learning exchange with you all. Until I become an entrepreneur, I was a mom and I was an elementary school teacher for many years. Then I came to United States to further study about education and went back home, become a teacher's educator, school founder, and education policy advocate. And one day in my life, a young girl came along and she is the alpha generation, and that changed my perspective about education. Previously, from a different hats, but when I become a mom of an alpha generation, when they want to touch everything and responded, and learning, I want her learning be stimulated. I want her learning be joyful, not a duty, like in my times. I was a kid with dyslexic, and I was also had a kid with ADHD. So my mom had a hard time, and my mom was a teacher, and I became a teacher, and I wanted to help other students who have learning difficulties. So when I become a mom of a child, it changed the game. And when I came to United States again for my master's degree in Cambridge, and I came to realize the difference, changes happening in US for the education. And at the same time in 2016 in Myanmar, we had digital transformation that $2,000 phone become $5. So it's a big shift. It was the right time to get into this mobile education and also, make quality education accessible. Previously, quality education has been a luxury for the top cream of the top, who can afford to go to international schools. So we started dreaming about building this mobile learning platform for those who wouldn't have chance otherwise, starting with my daughter. And in our products, we even have our daughter's photos here. So my daughter is a game changer, and she changed my perspective on education from a teacher's trainer, school founder, to now an education technology entrepreneur. Thank you very much for asking.
Many thanks, Lala. Remy.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as what he said, my name is Remy, and I'm coming originally from Burundi. I'm living in Malawi as a refugee. So the point that I realized that inspired me to build and create Technolab was after realizing and accepting the limitation that was already there, limitation of free movement, limitation of not be allowed to work or to participate in the community, the host community, as somebody who can contribute in development. That was when I realized that we need to get another way, a way out for refugee and young people and underprivileged community to be able to solve the problem of job issues and poverty. So from that way, I started now training young refugees how to create solution, especially software in Android. My main goal was that if they are able to build application which can be convincing, they can be able to get job online. And I was using that as a reference because I was also started working online. And I say, no, with this opportunity that is online, they don't care who you are. They don't look where you are coming from. They don't look your background. At the end of the day, they want you are delivering. What are you delivering at the end of the day? So I say, let us build, no matter how hard it will, but let us build a very academy, ICT academy that will help young people to be able to work online. And that's how we reach now today, that we are training even now Malawians. We have even been involved with the government of Malawi to train host community in the villages, and we equip them with skills. We have already in this year, we have already got 4 people who are working online on Upwork. We have 2 who have been taken to the secondary as the ICT trainer. So it's have changed. They have given the opportunity to people who were not having any other opportunity. Now they can stand, and also they can build the local solutions. This is also one of the things that give me power and encourage me that people in the villages few people think about technology to solve issues in the villages. But if the people in the villages or people who are underprivileged, they have knowledge and capability in technology, they are now going to be also solving their own problem technologically. And that we see that in different ways. So that has been a very turning point to me, to see the limitation that not only push you to go back, but to think about another way out, that you can use the same limitation to push you up and to help other people to work together to go further. Yeah, thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Remy. And very synergistic as you think about the impact that Lala was just talking about and what Remy was talking about, that opportunity to really solve real issues and limitations that we no longer want to bear ourselves. Mobova.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for Global Citizen. It's great to be here, and it's a very important time, and in the same time, very sensitive time for me. I fought for education my whole life, but I feel like that fight that I did over 20 years went through the tunnel. I feel very hopeless what just happened in Afghanistan and the fight that I did. Education was always my passion, and I fought for education my whole life. In 1994, when Taliban took over Afghanistan, there was no school or no opportunity for women to get education. And that was when they were in power, and women were without education for 5 years. In 2001, when America came to Afghanistan and they defeat some of Taliban leaders, women were allowed to go to school. And because a lot of people, educated people, leave to different countries, and there was a lot of things that happened, women couldn't go to school, and one was me. For me, there was two reasons that was really hard to get education. One, I was a woman, and the other thing, I was a polio survivor. I had polio. Whole life, I had to prove myself that even education is a very basic right, but I had to fight for it so much. A month and a half before a month and a half, Taliban came again. I have a 16 years old sister who is in 11th grade, and all the things that I fought to get education, to have a voice, to fight for your freedom, now I am telling her to not do that because of her security. So what I am, basically my point is that whatever I fight for it looks like my fight get more harder. And now my sisters, instead of it become easier for them, it become more harder, and now they have to stay home. Before that, it was COVID, and they couldn't get quality education in Afghanistan. And now Taliban came, and they are locked at home. And what really makes me upset is the whole world is watching, and this happening to Afghanistan, especially women. But the point is, what about the woman who lost their son in the war? What about a sister who lost their brother? Who is gonna feed them? Who is gonna get them food if they don't go to work, if they don't get education and go to school? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maboba. As we listen and understand in that conflict between education as a basic right and having to fight for that right, and potentially even feeling hopeless relative to that right. How do you think about this in terms of opportunity and access for all? Ella.
Thank you so much, Adrian, for introducing me. As he mentioned, my name is Ella, and I'm a Burundian, but currently a refugee in Rwanda. As he introduced me, I'm working at Kepler as a refugee college guidance counselor, but I want to mention that I came here in Rwanda as a refugee student, and I attended Kepler, and it was in 2015. And when my life turned and when I started being really interested in advocating for refugee and being interested in how we can make sure that refugees are able to access education is when it was in my first year as a student in Kepler. I want to mention that I was from Burundi, and Burundi is a French-speaking country, and I lived in a country which is an English-speaking country, and I had to continue my studies because I was that girl who always dreamed to continue her studies and to empower other young people. So I put in much effort, and I'm lucky that I was admitted to a university that had a program that supported refugees and made sure that they were able to face the language barrier and all of the challenges that refugees always came across when they want to pursue their education. And something really happened in my first year. I was invited to attend in UNESCO Paris and to be a keynote speaker as a refugee student. And I was really, really shocked when they said that only 1% of refugees were able to access higher education, and that was part of that 1% in 2017. And another kind of things that really shocked me, it was when people could come to me during that conference and they could hear that I was fluent in both English and French, but they couldn't understand that. They were like, "Are you sure you're a refugee?" And that stereotype really shocked me. And I was like, when I go back in Rwanda, when I go and finish my studies, I really need to make sure I do something about this. I need to make sure that those stereotypes that kind of don't have refugees to be accepted in different scholarship, in different schools, because they are hindered by different challenges. I need to do something about it. So then when I graduated, I was like, I want to go to volunteer. I wasn't interested in other job. I was like, I want to go in refugee camp and volunteer and do some of the preparatory program that Kepler implemented in refugee camps so that we can make sure that refugees are having a given time where they could prepare themselves to access different scholarship, because we had to make sure that they are comfortable using English, because most of them here in Rwanda come from DRC and Burundi. There are French-speaking countries, and that's one of the big challenges that refugees all over the world are facing. They face language barriers. So when they flee the country, they don't know what's going to happen in the country they're fleeing. So a lot of things are going to hinder them to access higher education. So that's the reason why I believed in the mission of Kepler and the Southern New Hampshire University, that we need to also include refugees in our education programs. So, and now I'm so happy to let you know that I'm now managing one of the preparatory program implemented by Kepler that I started as an intern, and now I'm working as a staff. And also since I joined, we've been able to serve more than 600 students in East Africa, so that to make sure that they are able to access higher education, they are getting the right guidance. And also we make sure that institutions are aware that there are potential students in refugee camps or at the urban sites. And on top of being a refugee guidance counselor, I'm an advocate of higher education, of refugee education. I'm part of the Tertiary Refugee Student Network as a global leader. We implemented that in 2019, and the goal is to raise the number to 15% of refugee students enrolled in higher education by 2030. And we are working with refugee learners and alumni from the local, national, and the global level. And we make sure that they provide guidance to institutions and students themselves to promote quality academic experiences and increase awareness and access to opportunities such as internship, professional development, and employment. We're not stopping by quality education only. We need also to think what's gonna be next, because different countries are not giving the right to work to refugees. I'm lucky that I was received in Rwanda. Rwanda has the right to work to refugees. There are so many countries that don't provide the right to work to refugees. That's the reason why we keep promoting, we keep advocating for refugee rights, not only quality education, even the right to work for refugees, because they need to think that there is a hope that I can provide for my family, that I can contribute in my community, that I can be someone who really wants to reach the goal I always wanted to achieve. Thank you so much.
Ella, thank you so very much. I think what we heard was through Ella's voice, bringing voice to the situation is, do you see it as a burden or do you create an opportunity? And Ella created some real opportunities with that. So we invite questions into the chat. And we have one question from Catherine from the nonprofit Rain for Sahel. Catherine, if you could come off mute, introduce yourself and frame your question for us.
Hi, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you. Your stories are deeply inspiring, and those are my thoughts and prayers with you, your family and your sisters. My question is for Remy. I'm really curious about the work that you do. And I just, while you were speaking, quickly hopped on Google, and according to the World Bank data that I found, it looks like just about 14% of people in Malawi have access to the internet. And so I was curious, given the focus that you have and that Take No Lab has on working with underprivileged communities, how you overcome that context to work with the people that you're trying to reach.
Can I go ahead, Adrian? Yeah.
Please do.
All right, thank you very much for the question. One of the things that I should state also is the process was a little bit hard on the beginning because we had no proper mostly material, and thanks to SNHU, who has helped us a very, very big way because they built a center where we are able to welcome more than 100 students to learn at one time. So this is very big thanks goes to the president of SNHU and the board members that made that to happen. So how now we approach the issue of connectivity, which is one of the biggest in our community in Malawi and most of the African community, is we train people from the ground, but also we work together with communities to identify those problems that they look like they can be solved with different solutions that are already existing. I will give an example. Last year on the pandemic, we had the issue of people, all the offices were locked down, were closed, and the people could not access offices. So what we worked together with the community was to build up the USSD system, which is commonly used for feature phones. Majority has the very, very minimal mobile feature phones. So they can access information, they can send information using the feature phones. And at the end of the same front-end application, we had a lot of other things that are happening. So we are also working on building local community network that are the ones that are going to be very cheapest, which facilitate the accessibility, but also the connectivity problem within a lot of other areas. So we work both sides. We work physically, but also we look at the problems that need technology and finding the very, very minimal technology that can solve the problem, while we are looking at how we can bring in the main solution. Because like on the USSD, I will build on also on the USSD, we have built mostly 3 to 4 programs. Even now people can learn using USSD. People can report cases using the USSD. So a lot of the challenge that we have also push us to look at how we can solve the problem while we are equipping the community to be the first in building, maintaining, but also uplifting itself toward the technology advancement.
Great, Remy, thank you. Catherine, does that answer your question?
It certainly gives me a lot to think about. Thank you.
And please feel free to share more about what you're thinking. And again, we invite others to raise questions as well. Lala, I think there's a question around how do things stand right now in Myanmar?
Right now, it has been 2 years in a row. First year because of COVID, 12 million students had no access to education. And this year, because of the coup d'etat, the students, again, don't have access to education. And the children, first year because of COVID, stay at home. And the government had not prepared a system, online education system to help it, except our program. Our program, it's online, and it's also, once they download it, it's in their phone, they can use offline. So parents are using it and accessing it. This year, the government shift, it's now military dictator, and they don't want anybody have education, but they want to open the school. They allow the soldiers in the classrooms, but they don't allow the parents in the school compound or nearby. So parents are not, they don't trust, and they not send the kids to school. And my nieces, my daughter, now that she is outside of the country, her educations continue, but my nieces, they have been stuck inside the family compound for 2 years in a row, no education. And that's for the 12 million students. And on our platform, when we started it, it was for the minorities and those who do not have the education, formal quality education. We started this online mobile learning platform. And on our platform, we have 13 apps, and that is about 7 apps are totally free and others are commercial. And those apps, it's meant for the minority who do not have the chance. And now that become the whole country. So in a time like this, when 60,000 million schools are closed and 500,000 teachers are fired and on the run because of their civil disobedience movement, and students stay at home and no chance. But those who have access to our platform, there are 400,000 students we are educating as of today and continuously providing access to education now. If they have a phone, if they have downloaded a program, they can continue to study and they don't need to have the internet continuously. But the thing is, we do not have all the grades and all the subjects. We only focus on STEM and English. So we continue to provide access to education for STEM and English subjects, but still a big shortage. And when we ourselves got into the refugee camp, the kids in the compound, they only have their phone and they are learning with our programs. And we got totally popular when they realized that we are the inventor of the platform. And it's very rewarding and also heartbreaking to see that, that's the only education they are having. And we hope to continue on our mission to provide this access to quality education in Myanmar and beyond.
Thank you. There's a question in the chat, Lamontash, if you would like to come off mute and ask your question and let us know your affiliation as well.
Hello, everybody. Yes, my name is Leman Tosh. I'm Associate Dean of Social Sciences. I asked this question with this purpose, like every market, right? Every job market has its own specificity. And the purpose of education is to prepare students, right? Better for the job market, but to give them better opportunities. We talk about it all the time. So I just wonder in those conditions, how this education path is crafted towards students' needs and also to their specific employment conditions of that market, whether these conversations are taking place, at what level these conversations are taking place. That was my question. Given again that it's so different, right? And it can be affected by civil disorder, it can be affected by specificity of that region. There are so many factors that intervene. And education can be crafted, right? Like a little bit modified, adapted to those specific needs. So where do the students get that information? How this all come together?
Thank you. Responses.
I can try to answer the question based on our program, how we help some of our students to get opportunities after education. So I just want to highlight that at Kepler, we have a career department, and the career department support our students from their first year when they join Kepler and until the last year when they are getting prepared to the job market. And also the career team makes sure that they connect with employers to know what they're looking for, and so that to make sure that we like kind of giving skills that are needed on the job market to our students. And also I want to mention that our students are required to do a work study or are required to do an internship so that they can get an idea of what they want to do after graduation, and also to prepare to have a good resume or CV. So some of the program are now using the same system, making sure that they have a team that supports students to get ready for the job market. And also when we do some events where our students meet with employers, such as career like events where they network with employers, and then what they learn, what they need to improve in their skills and how they should like market themselves. And also I want to highlight when it comes to refugees, sometimes it get hard because some of the employers, they don't know that, for example, refugees are allowed to work. So we had to do, in the first year, it was hard with Kepler, but we had to invite employees around the table and to talk with UNHCR to have documents that can testify that refugees are allowed to work in the country, and also making sure that students themselves, they understand that. Most of the time, students are not confident because they are not really understanding the rights. They need to understand the right in the countries. that hosted them. So we made sure that our refugee capital students are aware of those rights and can explain to employees during interviews, and also employees themselves, they really understand, they can see document that testify that refugee work can work here in Rwanda. And also there are some other, I would say on behalf of JAM, that there are some other opportunities that they come up, like for example, making sure that students can get online opportunities, because for example, if we talk about Kenya, where refugees are not given the right to work, so JAM, for example, came with this idea to make sure that refugee students can get online job where they can work without needing the right to work, the document that they need to show to employees. There are so many solutions that have been implemented by different partners based on the contest. I was talking about the contest here in Rwanda, and also the other contests that I know in Kenya, because I spent there some time with students and to learn more of the challenges that they're facing. And also I mentioned when I was introducing myself, that we're doing preparatory program. So those preparatory program also help students to get skills or knowledge that they need when applying for different jobs. So we need to make sure that we're providing quality education that are needed for students to access opportunities after education. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, thank you very much, because I was thinking the same, exactly, right? In certain conditions, right, in refugee camps, it can be challenging. It can not be that straightforward, or on the conditions of civil unrest. So then you have to do something different, right? Not in the mainstream, especially working with students, working with employees. So absolutely, yeah. Thank you very much. And I still another question, which I'm curious about too, about documentation regarding that. I'm sorry, I'm jumping on that question, but that was kind of related to what I asked about. So I will let Adrian take over.
No, thank you. Thank you. No, I'm thinking, Remy, it sounds like TechnoLab would actually speak to the adaptability of skills that are needed for a dynamic workforce or changing environments. Is that a solution that TechnoLab satisfies?
Yes, one of the main things that we are looking at is somebody has not to be limited with the location. That's one of the main approach we are looking, because locally in the country, it's like Malawi, we have also challenge of jobs. There is a lot of graduates and there is few jobs. Now look at the issue of people who are in very local villages. It become a little bit challenging because the information to reach them, it's delayed, or there's a lot of challenge that make somebody who is totally deep in remote area to face a lot of limitation in the regard to jobs. So through that's why we approach the online facility, where, especially for our side, we are training in the field that is open, and we have a lot of open material and open source curriculum that can be applied anywhere across the globe. So that's one of the advantage for us, that someone from Malawi can work with anyone from anywhere in the world, and the work at the end of the day, what we mostly focus is only to teach about professionalism, the discipline of the environment, the job, the terms and conditions, those kind of things. But at the end of the day, the adaptability to anywhere, and to be able to deliver exactly what they're expected to do.
Yeah, that is fantastic, and we've got a couple more questions on the opportunity for technology to solve some of our problems, and then also one around documentation. But I'm seeing a note here by Dr. Bell that I think is a wonderful sort of piece to really help umbrella all of this. So, Dr. Bell, would you like to share your comment and the context behind that?
Okay, I was just saying, first of all, this is really an awesome program, all the speakers and you as moderators, so thank you. And mine was really more of a comment than a question, because I have really gotten so into being a global citizen, thanks to the Global Citizen Circle and the civil discourse that we pursue. And I was thinking that the issues that the speakers have raised are really reflected in the United States education system. By that, I mean, we are at the point of banning books. And there's always been a sense to push out people, particularly people of color, out of the school system. We do it less gently. They're not, maybe people are not showing up with assault rifles, but I'm not putting that past some people these days at the schools. But we have police in schools. We have people who are calculating how to build prisons based upon how many Black children get through the 8th grade. I mean, these are kinds of things that people are thinking about. So it's a system that really oppresses people and really discourages people in a different way. And so it seems to me that if we always connect what's happening in other countries to what's happening in the United States, that helps build the global wide movement for change. And then I ended with a quote by Martin Luther King, as I usually do, that says, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere."
Wow. Very powerful, not just in the oration, but also in the context in which you've laid this. And, often we see these issues as being very isolated or bifurcated, divisive, or, it was only happening here. But if you put the illustration in the right context, like you just said, well, it may not be assault rifles, but it could look like this. That's when we really began to find those points of resonance around, how do we solve for that? Theo, you had a question earlier about, again, a solve. So do you want to share your question?
Yes, thank you. I just am thinking about Maboba and her family and her friends and all of the young women and men, but particularly the women in Afghanistan. And I'm just wondering, given, we've learned from Remy and from Lala about the use of technology to help educate, both at the primary level with Lala's programs and also at the secondary and post-secondary level and training for jobs as well from Remy. And I just wonder if there's any possibilities in Afghanistan for the use of these kinds of technologies to find solutions to the problem that women are facing right now. So I'll let Maboba answer that.
Thank you. In fact, before Taliban come to Afghanistan and take over, I had this idea similar to Remy and that I will also have a online school for girls and women in Afghanistan, especially that are far in the village and have no access. There was two group of women that had no access to education. One was because of security. If they go to school, they will get raped or they would get killed and stuff like that. And the other was just they were not allowed. They were Taliban don't believe in women education. Now the problem, or I don't see any possibility as of right now, because Taliban themselves don't believe in women education. And I don't think they even believe in education. They just believe in manpower controlling a country. A woman should obey, and that's all they want. They don't believe a woman should be able to go out and work. For me, as of right now, if I start online school or education system or technology, they are not willing to work with me. First of all, I broke the tradition. I am in America, I'm educated, I studied in English, so there is no way they will give me the opportunity to work with Afghan women, because they would think that I'm changing women's mind and I'm educating them against Taliban. So that is a lot of controlling there. And the second huge problem, we don't have internet. we had some internet in previous government when that collapsed. Now with Taliban, we don't have internet. There is very little connection. And the third biggest problem, I think that's the first, and then the technology is the second. Electricity. We bought our electricity from Tajikistan, and it was a contract between Afghanistan and Tajikistan. But because Taliban took over and they are not getting funded by it because they are not recognized by other countries, the electricity is going off. And we have in Afghanistan just 3 to 4 hours electricity per night just to charge the phone or something like that, and that's it. I heard from my brother yesterday that he was saying the electricity will go away forever because Taliban are not getting funded to buy the electricity from Tajikistan, so there will be no electricity. A lot of family who fought for education and especially have a daughter like me in America, they are in great danger because I spoke up against Taliban. I did my education. I am here. I did a lot of speeches, and that put me in a great danger. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I had trouble finding my mute button. There's a wonderful note here in the chat that Jackie Redpath from Northern Ireland might be able to give some context for how do you access, if you can, education in very troubled times. Jackie, do you feel comfortable in sharing some perspective on that?
Sure. Thank you, Adrian, and thanks, Nadine, for dropping me in it. I mean, obviously the depth of the problem we're hearing from other parts of the world do not exist in Northern Ireland in the same way. Despite that, you know, we have had our problems here for many years, and a peace process that has been unfolding over the last 25 years, but which is in some difficulty at the moment due to age-old historic problems coming to the fore, really caused by the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the European Union, which has created an age-old issue, or recreated an age-old issue and given it a profile around borders, whether between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, or this protocol that's talked about that is set up a border between, in the Irish Sea, between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom. And this has brought to the surface old difficulties and violence onto the streets last April, with a new generation of young people, which was dreadfully sad, and you know, was involving young people of 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And where this comes back to education is that those kids that were ratting and also ratting between various factions, as well as with the police, were entirely predictable because they were coming from underserved, disadvantaged communities. And even within those communities, they were young people who were most separated from the educational system. And there's no question in my mind for those that are in any peace building scenario in other parts of the world, that education is a vital element, because without it, young people have nothing to lose. And when they have nothing to lose, they turn to violence in many instances. And we've recently, I've been part of producing a report on addressing educational underachievement in Northern Ireland, and I'll post up a link to that report for those that are interested. Though my embarrassment here, sitting in a country, you know, that is not in the desperation that other parts of the world are in, that I've just heard from, that, you know, that we would even dream of going back to the dark days of the conflict in Northern Ireland. And while that's not necessarily going to happen, it has become, it has suddenly had some currency again for the first time in 25 years. So it is so powerful. I mean, the Global Citizen Circle, the link with those other parts of my work. My heart goes out to you.
Jackie, thank you so much for sharing that depth of perspective. And again, going back to what Dr. Bell said, finding those points of intersection across boundaries and borders is really where the power of convening comes into play, but then also the challenge of what do we as actors do in this movement. Gentile had a question for Ella around documentation, and then Pierre Morton, you have a question. So let's begin with Gentile and then Pierre.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gentile, and yes, I'm based in Rwanda, and I'm a refugee, and I was one of those people who were lucky enough to be granted the scholarship by Chapter with partnership with Southern New Hampshire University. And among my questions, I just asked this question, like this is actually what is happening when institutions look for scholars. They want scholars to fulfill the requirements, and among those requirements, you need to have this diplomas or academic documents, and most of the time they have to be similar, or like they have to be from the host community. So my question is, how Kepler how Kepler and other institutions think about helping these people who want to, who qualify for higher education but don't have the equivalences. That was my first question. It's the question, and I have a recommendation as well. Also, when you want to be educated, most of the time you have a passion. You have something you really want to pursue as education. So sometimes the thing that you want to pursue is not like in your country, is not in the country you are hosted in. Sometimes you need to fight and find somewhere else where you can go and pursue your education. For example, for masters, for higher education, you need actually most of the time to go outside the country with hosted. And because of those vulnerable backgrounds, it's really, really hard for people to be given permission, visa to go and pursue their dreams. So I'm positive that people could maybe consider this advocacy on this issue. And thank you so much for having this session.
Adrian, should I go answer the question?
Yes, please. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Jonty, for asking that question. I know that's one of the questions that have been really asked in so many conversations, and that's really one of the big challenges that refugees are facing, documentation. And I just want to highlight that at Kepler, we have a preparatory program for refugees. And Jonty, I know that you're aware of that program, but the ETM program, which is that preparatory program, we have students who graduated from secondary school to get ready for scholarship, to get ready for higher education, and the documentation is part of it. We know that the documentation is very hard. So in those 6 months, we make sure that students who attended the preparatory program are able to do some exams that are kind of prove their level of English, and also we have them to access some of the documents here in the government. During that program, we kind of give them the guidance, and we provide some financial support if they are required to leave the camp and to come in the city to look for those documents. So in that program, we make sure that our students, they have enough time to get ready for tests, and also to get those documents that they don't have with them. And if some of them, they have them in their country, we also come up with some ways on how we can make the process much more easier for refugees than the host community. So, and also we can't ignore the fact that the government also have some rules and regulation that students need to have some document that prove that they went for high school. So we make sure that our students can access those documents and that they can like find ways to prove that they attended high school. It's still a hard process, but we're trying to make it more easier for refugees. Like for example, we have a campus in Kisiba camp, which became more easy because we understand the situation and we understand the process because we visited the camps and we are on site and we kind of, it became more easier for us to support our students. And thank you so much, Jonty, for bringing again the documentation issue about visa. So I hope that everyone understood your advocacy word and that everyone will take in consideration to make the process for refugees much more easier, because there are some of them, they left the country with and nothing, so but they didn't have a plan to just leave everything, but they are not able to access those documents. And I heard amazing projects that are coming that will help refugees to access some of the documents or make it more easier for both institution and students to get to make the process much more easier. Thank you.
Ella, thank you so much. Pierre has a question, and then I'm actually going to roll up Elizabeth Richards' question right after Pierre, because it's very fascinating. I'm just trying to understand the difference between Elizabeth's questions around structural inequities and other forms of inequities. So Pierre, your question, and then Elizabeth will follow, and then Emmanuel.
Thank you. Although rolling that up sounded much more interesting than my question, but I'll go ahead and one, I would love to figure out a way that we can, those of us who would like to, how we can sponsor a refugee to get those documents, to get those visas. You know, it costs money to do those things, or maybe even sponsor them to come and stay here with us, right? So those of us who have and who can do that, I'd like to find out some information about that, number one. Number two, I think, are there structures in place? I'm sorry, Ella, I guess that first question was to you, right? About sponsorship in any way. The second question is, are there structures in place, or is there an emphasis on entrepreneurial education? I believe one of the brothers, when I first came on, said that there was a lack of jobs. So even if you provide education, if you're lucky enough to be able to do that, there are a lack of jobs. So is there a focus on teaching entrepreneurial skills and innovation skills? And the last is to make education real and practical, the use of mentorships is quite important. Is there something that is happening in any of your organizations regarding mentorship? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Adrian. Should I go?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, so about the sponsorship, I'm not the right person of like having refugees to another country, but I have been in those situations. I've been able to travel in so many countries for conferences or for work purpose, and the process is so really hard when first you are not supported by UniHR. I think this discussion should be much more discussed with UniHR education team, and I'm sure that Adrian and myself, we can have some connection on how we can connect to talk much more about the sponsorship of refugees if they want to go in that country, to leave the host country and to go to another country to access opportunities. And I will talk more about the entrepreneurship and the mentorship programs. Yes, at Kepler, we do have that. And also on behalf of the TRSN, which is the Tertiary Refugee Student Network, we are kind of implementing some projects that are supporting students, like mentorship, like for example, in West Africa, we've been having alumni coming up with different mentorship programs to support other refugees in the camp who are getting ready for higher education, and they help them in the process of applying, mentoring them. How can you succeed in an interview when you're applying for a job? And talking about coming back to Kepler, what we do we have Kepler in Ethiopia. We started last year, and the focus is more on how to help graduate to access employment opportunities. So we have a team there that are kind of supporting both. We are now working with Ethiopian, but we're hoping to work with refugees, and we are implementing some programs there as well that will be supporting both the refugee community and the host community. That's for Ethiopia. And for the Rwandan, we've been able to work. It's been like more than 3 years when we are supporting students in mentorship programs. I mentioned that in the previous conversation, that we kind of help both host community and refugees to access scholarship. We know what are the challenges, what they need, the requirement for those scholarship, and also we approach university and local institution working here in Rwanda that to visit the program and to see that they are refugees who are able to compete for those scholarships like anyone else. And coming back to your question about entrepreneurship, Kepler is implementing new projects on how we can support and students who want to continue with entrepreneurship, on how we can develop those skills and how we can support them and guide them in that pathway. I don't know if I answered your question.
Excellent. And I think Remy has some additional response to that. Remy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, on the part of the entrepreneurship, we, as what he said, we can't complain about jobs if we haven't looked at how to create this kind of jobs. So one of the things that we have also approached is to create jobs through entrepreneurship. We train these young people on how to start business, but also we do incubation. We incubate some of the best idea and we take them through the process of acceleration. That is by connecting them with a different organization, equipping them with the skills and knowledge, but also capacity building, but also seed funding whenever it's possible for those best idea. Because at the end of the day, if we empower one big idea, we are creating more than 3 to 4 jobs. So with that in mind, that's why we have been looking mostly also on the entrepreneurship to make sure that we equip people, we give them skills, but also we create jobs from the same community that can be able to uplift itself and develop itself. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Remy. So the point you're making there is, again, how do you create opportunities to solve local problems, right? Elizabeth.
Hi, Adrian. I don't know that I have a really well-formed question so much. It's just a sort of thought that's floating around in here that I wonder how other people are feeling about. As I'm listening to so many people talk about the work that they're doing, I'm sort of thinking about the differences between places where there are structural inequities built into the system. So the United States is a great example of that. It sounds like maybe Ireland has some examples of that, versus places where the denial of education is more overt, right? Afghanistan, where, right, education is not accessible for girls and women. And certainly it seems to me that the impact, regardless of which of those is in place, that the impact is the same. You have people who are not able to access education. But in terms of how we approach these problems, should we be thinking about those differently, or should we be thinking about them similarly? And I think there are a lot of people on the call who are, I mean, certainly the panelists, I would love your thoughts, but like, I think there are a lot of people here who are doing work in this space, and I'm curious how people are thinking about these problems differently or similarly.
So I will just interject here because I'm passionate about this work. Doesn't mean that I'm great at it. It just means I'm passionate about it and I have a little bit of experience in it. And I think that yes, there, for areas that don't really have a structure that is in place there at all, right? Maslow's scale that, there is no structure, right? Of course, that you have to look at as how do I create equitable structures in an area that doesn't have any structures, even though the impact, right, is the same, whether you have bias structures or you just have chaos, right? One of those is you're looking at how to build it from the ground up. And I think that the other one, so for me in my institution and my work, we already have institutions here in the United States that are already structured in a way to keep some folks down and to lift some folks up. So I go with a different lens and I think about, what does that look like? What does that structure look like? Who does it impact? How does it impact them? And so you're sort of working backwards from the impact. Okay, this is who it impacts. How did that impact this group of this segment of individuals? What did that look like to them? How did they access it, right? As opposed to having no structures and folks are still impacted, you sort of work a little bit sort of the opposite. How do I lift these people up? What sustainable structures can I codify? Can I make law or legislate or codify to make this a sustainable, equitable structure? So that's the advice I would give. I'm not great at it. I'm still learning how to do it, but I'll be quiet and let someone else speak.
Any other reaction?
When in a case of Myanmar, when the structure and system breaks down, it is individuals and groups of individuals who have to pick ourselves and build a parallel system. In our case, we're building the parallel system. Even the government is the real government. It's in jail, and shadow government is on the run, and dictator in power, doing nothing about education. Individuals, groups of individuals, students, and staff members of our team. Some of them in hiding and working, still continue to work in Myanmar. Some of them we were able to move it to Thailand for their personal safety, and working continuously, to make sure that those 400,000 on our platform have continuous access to education for STEM and English language in a time like this, and much more students hopefully can have access to education. So I believe that every challenges come with opportunity. When the structure itself is broken down, it's opportunity to build a parallel system. Why not? We don't have to scaffold on the old one. We just build a new, and the one we dream to build. Why not?
Great, Lala, thank you. That's a very interesting dynamic and very interesting concept. Who would think to build a parallel system, particularly in places where structures are so embedded and so institutionalized? How do you imagine, being able to do that? Emmanuel, and then Priscilla Lee also has a question for Lala as well, but Emmanuel.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Okay, hi everyone, good day, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Emmanuel and I work at GEM as the Employer Relations Coordinator. And I would like to thank everybody for just being here and creating this platform, because it really made me rethink the importance of not forgetting our social responsibilities and duties to one another. So my question is just like to know, who do you guys think the discussion leaders, who do you think should be the main actor or agent to enforce or to aid in the access of education and opportunity? Because as a refugee myself in Malawi with Remy, states are often the main actor in terms of guaranteeing us human rights and security. but there's some aspects where you find that opportunities are not offered because of certain laws and restrictions. I can give an example of a student who, when they finished their secondary school, they got really high points, and they were supposed to, and they were chosen actually to study for a full scholarship in China. But when the system found out that they were a refugee, they kind of didn't want to give her the scholarship anymore. So it needed humanitarian agencies, it needed like legal instruments and various people to ensure that the student, based on her performance, should be given the scholarship. So you might find that GEM is offering this program to refugees in Malawi to get a BA in the different areas, but the laws in Malawi restricts us to work. We don't have the rights to work. So how can we balance that? What do you think should be more at the forefront of allowing access to education and opportunity? And for the second question, if government cannot do that, or humanitarian cannot be the focus, how do we want private corporations to aid in equalizing access to education? What can they do? How do we want them to help us? And yeah, that's pretty much my question.
Thoughtful, big, really big questions. Anyone want to respond? You can either try to do it at the 30,000 foot level, or you can chip at some aspect of it. But I think it's a beautiful question that Emmanuel's asked.
I can answer the second part of the question.
Yes, please, thank you.
In Afghanistan situation, I think there should be more restriction on Taliban government since they are there to allow women education and education overall, and also allowed technology and all the improvement that we have in Afghanistan. They shouldn't let, the world shouldn't let Taliban regime to just get away with not giving permission to women to get education. And if government cannot do, there is a lot of different organizations that can help, like UN and other organizations that can step in and not let this happen, because it can bring a lot of issues. But the other solution that could be, for example, I have two of my brothers that they have full scholarship to SNU, but there is no way that they can get out. So if they make this this process and this opportunity a little bit easier, especially for students to get education, they're already missing a month of their studies, and make it easier for students to get to a third country to get education until they are fixing this issue or talking about it, so the students stay motivated and also they get education.
Great. Remy, looks like you have a response as well.
Yes, I wanted to add on top of what she said, on side of this kind of systematical limitation, specifically like the organization that I'm working with, the refugee-led organization for African chapter. And this is the all refugee-led organization coming together, discussing the main pain that they as a refugee-led organization are facing, but also as a refugees. So one of the approach on kind of things that Emmanuel has mentioned is high level advocacy. So this means that there is need of advocacy from the every level, but starting with refugees. We need to, as refugees or people who are facing challenges, they have to raise the voice, they have to speak it out. We're following a systematically approach so that if there's no discussion about these issues, this issue will keep on existing and they will affect a lot of people. So we are working on that, and we are open to welcome everyone who is interested, because we are now structuring national networks across Southern Africa, and I was lucky to be selected and appointed as the lead of that particular program. But the main thing now we are focusing on is to put these things in the voice, to talk about mobility, to talk about access to education, to talk about freedom of involvement and even development. If you look at SDG, it's not talking about a refugee Lilo at all. So even refugee, they don't know, mostly we don't know about the SDG, what it's all about. Why? Because there's a little bit more involvement of people who are a little bit left out. So we need to raise the voice and discuss, but also keep this on the table and also participate in those decision-making tables so that at the end of the day, every contribution will be counted. Thank you.
Great. Remy, thank you. And Moboba, thank you. We have, we're coming up short on we're coming up on our time. We've got 2 questions remaining. Priscilla has a question, and then Nadine, I'd love for you to ask your question as we close, and then we can wrap that up and through. I believe if there's still questions that people have, please feel free to put those in the chat, and our team will be able to pull those together and connect you with responses. So Priscilla.
Yes, actually, Lala did speak a little to this. I was thinking about, she told me that her staff at 360 ED, they were students actually looking to gain job skills. And so she was, in a sense, she hired them to start creating 360 ED for the K through 12 students. She paired 2 needs that she saw in her country regarding the education system, the social system. Now with the kind of everything upended a little bit, I just was wondering, you said you have some of them out in Thailand for safety to be able to keep it running. Is that enough? And what do you see for this situation in your country is not likely to change overnight. What do you see as the prospects for the work that 360 has been doing? And for these young people that you mentioned to me, many are going to join the civilian army that, and, giving up their keyboards and picking up guns.
Yeah, that's right. Some of our team members, sadly, they join. I can't say sadly or gladly. They're fighting for the country. They give up their keyboard and pick up the guns to fight back. Some of them got arrested. Some of them got shot. And we're able to move some of them to Thailand, but that's a temporary solution. They started working at 360 as interns, and then they become staff members. And when the crackdowns got intense and the digital platform that we are building, it's opposed to the military, and the crackdown became intense. And some of the team members, they quit it. And I don't blame them, it's for their safety. And those who don't quit, don't keep on building the platform for the sake of 12 million students. We keep them dear to our hearts, and they are in Thailand, and it's a temporary solution. And some of them want to come to United States, and they're bright students, so we are looking at the opportunity for study opportunity, maybe at the universities, because they deserve it. They keep on building, although their lives is in danger, they keep on building the learning apps for those who need it most. So yeah, I would welcome the suggestions and help those students, who can continue their further studies and who have committed to, building learning opportunity for the younger generations. Yeah.
Excellent. Lala, thank you for that. Nadine, would you like to share your question as we round this out? Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Adrian. I'm building on what Pierre encouraged all of us to think about, the concrete, practical ways that we can be supportive of people who are doing such extraordinary work in such amazingly challenging situations, and sponsorship, mentorship, hosting. Building on that, I also feel like I'd like to know from our participants, our discussants, what can we also do on an emotional level to connect to you, to help you keep up your spirit and your faith and your confidence and your, in the face of such devastating, I mean, I particularly think about Mabuba. I think my heart just breaks open when I hear everything that you're sharing that's happening within your own family. What are the ways that those of us who care, is there anything we can do to be supportive on any level?
Thank you. Well, it has been a very difficult time of my life. That's why my mind is kind of off and I don't really can focus what I'm exactly saying, or a lot of things goes out because I have had a very tragic. What really upsets me and makes me really sad, as I said earlier, I worked 20 years of my life, so my sister doesn't have to experience what I experienced. And unfortunately, that happened again. And my 16 years old sister is locked at home. She has nothing, she done nothing wrong and she is still stuck at home. My brothers are, and my brother was saying the other day that Afghanistan became like a big present for us, and now we are stuck. Even though they have the education documents to get out, they cannot get out because there is no American embassy or any embassy that will help out to get my family. I stood up for right of education, for right of women to raise some voice for women who has no voice. And today I'm scared of my own voice because it puts my family in danger. At the moment, the great thing for me to be very effective so I can speak more for other people who are stuck in Afghanistan to help my family. And how I'm going to do that, because some people are telling me, do you know anyone in Congress? I don't think any American know anyone in Congress. So how is that possible for me, an international woman coming from Afghanistan, will know anyone in Congress? So it shouldn't be about who you know, you should be about who needs help. And at this moment, because of the security and all the issues that my family and people like me who spoke up for the right thing shouldn't be suffering this much that I am doing. And of course, I got a lot of great support from family and from friends and people around here from my school, and saying that they are sorry. I'm sorry too, because a lot of people lost, and a lot of people, there were a lot of women who built businesses, who built a small NGOs, small organization that was huge, and 20 years of work went through a tunnel, and now it's not recognized. They had to leave the whole house, everything, and leave the country to just save themselves. And it shouldn't be like this, especially in 2021, and the whole world shouldn't watch that. They should do something. So for me, the most effective and the great thing will be if someone can do something to stop this. And I think it already happened, but I just ask the whole world, to stop this and to pay attention to the situation and not let million and million women to suffer again for 20 years. It took us 20 years to get through this, but if we repeat this, it will take us 40 years to do this again. And I don't think I can do it again, because it was such a challenge, and I know what I've gone through, and I don't think I have the ability to do it again, because my all energy went through.
You know, such powerful and emotional and thoughtful and precise response, and hearing what she just said was, you know, I'm in it, and for me to continue to solve these problems, there's not enough agency left to do that. And so there's a call to action. And I appreciate Nadine's question so much, because it is, what can I do? What can we do? And so as we, at least for this formal time, sort of conclude this part of the day. I'm not saying that we're concluding the conversation, because this is the conversation and the action that needs to continue to move forward. There are five themes that I'll just say very quickly that I pulled from today. The first is, again, going back to the power of people, the power of influence, not letting what limited you become the limitation of others and for others. The second is being able to create opportunities to solve problems that are right in front of you. And so sometimes that right in front of you is proximal. It's like literally you are in it. And sometimes what's right in front of you are the new things that are revealed because your eyes have been opened. I saw so many heads nodding as our discussion leaders were talking. And those nods were nods of affirmation, but those were also nods of, I did not know that. So it's both proximal as well as what's newly revealed. The next thing is, even though we are looking to create opportunities to solve local limitations or local problems or issues, we also have to put it in a global context. Because the singular issue that you're trying to address may be a very similar issue, although it may look or be dressed differently elsewhere. And so sometimes sometimes we are more prone to reinvent, as we say, reinvent the wheel, versus digesting information that's already out there. And how do you build upon that? How do you aggregate that information so that it creates more opportunities for solutions? Education is a right. And it is a right that is actually caught up against and is confronted with, again, those persistent, pervasive systemic issues and challenges. And so reconciling the right against all the things that are trying to impede it. And the last thing that I will share with you, and this is something Emmanuel said when he talked about, it's given him light around his own social responsibility and his obligation. He's talking about his sense of agency. But here's a quotation that a dear friend of mine often says. And he says, if you can't do a whole lot, do a whole little. Stake out the piece that you can affect, impact, and influence, and start there. So I thank you, Lala, Ella, Mabuba, and Remy. Thank you for being a part of my day, and thank you for what you've shared with everyone today. Theo.
Yes, thank you, Adrian, for that wonderful wrap up. It was really, as I just see Nadine put in the chat, brilliant. I think I was right that we can agree 100% that you are the perfect person to moderate this circle. So thank you for that. And thank you to our discussion leaders for being here, for sharing with us your very inspiring and emotional journeys to access education yourselves and help others to do the same. We are so grateful that you were with us today. I'm seeing so much going on in the chat here with ideas, connections. This is what Global Citizen Circle is about. And I welcome you all to stay on this platform for as long as you'd like. If you'd like to continue conversations, I understand the formal part of the program is over. Many of you probably have other things you have to get to, so feel free to jump off, but just know that we are here. We'll stay and talk and chat for as long as folks would like to do that. So thank you all for being here. We will follow up this program with an email where you will get the resources from the chat that were put in the chat. You will also get a link to a video recording of this program as well. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day. afternoon, evening, and let me also mention, sorry, I have one more thing to mention. We have another circle in October that we're very excited about. Janet Dewart-Bell will be leading a circle on October 27th on critical race theory. And we're very excited about that. Stay tuned for more information on that. Thanks all.